Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paddocks. On this episode, we're going to be covering a few key points in motorsport history and whether they were conspiracies or proven true. We're going to talk about Spygate, Crashgate, and a few more that just caught our eye. With us today, we have Amy, Ito, Casey, LeAnne, and myself, Chelsea. To start us off, I'm going to pass it to Ito, who's taking us for a little ride into the past, into the 90s.
So, while the controversy, or whatever you want to call it, that I'm going to cover isn't one incident, it's basically a series of incidents throughout the 1994 season, all involving Benetton Racing. The Benetton Formula One team, which was owned by Benetton Group, in very short, is a fashion conglomerate that is itself no stranger to scandals and controversies, was operated by Flavio Briatore. And he himself was at the center of several continuous and contentious situations throughout the season. So let's get started. One of the main controversies surrounding Benetton in 1994 was that the cars were equipped with an illegal traction control system. Traction control assistance is basically a system that manages the wheel spin during acceleration, providing better grip and performance. However, it was banned by the FIA, the governing body of Formula One, at the time. It was rumored that Benetton had found a way to implement a hidden traction control system in their cars, however. So you can imagine it being banned, but Benetton trying to get around that, controversy central. But that wasn't the only thing. Another thing was fuel filter violations. During the Brazilian GP, Benetton cars were found to have a fuel filter that did not comply with regulations. The team was fined and their results from the race were allowed to stand. However, this incident raised suspicions about the team's commitment to adhering to the rules. And then, of course, there were their drivers. And with that, we have Schumacher's disqualification at the British GP, where he was disqualified from the race due to excessive wear on the wooden skid block under his car. The skid blocks are basically designed to prevent the cars from bottoming out and damaging the track's surface. Benetton, however, argued that the wear was due to a legitimate accident, but the FI said no dice. And then we have Hockenheim, another incident. During the German GP, Schumacher's car caught fire during a pit stop. The team managed to extinguish the flames quickly, but the fuel nozzle remained attached to the car as Schumacher drove away. The incident posed a serious safety risk, as the fuel hose could have caused an accident or injured a pit crew member or just something. Because, I mean, there could also have been fuel left in the fuel hose that could have leaked onto the track. I don't even want to imagine what all the stuff that could have happened. And then we have Hungary. In Hungary, Schumacher's car stalled on the formation lap. After being pushed by marshals to get the car going again, Schumacher started from the back of the grid and eventually won the race. Very impressive. However, that raised suspicions because it pulled into question whether the team deliberately stalled the car to manipulate Schumacher's starting position. So, with all these controversies surrounding Benetton throughout the 1994 season, it led to widespread speculation about their practices and raised concerns about the team's adherence to the rules. These incidents, along with others, created this cloud of controversy that oftentimes overshadowed the season. Eventually, however, Schumacher won the Drivers' Championship, for his first one, by the way, and Benetton secured the Constructors' Championship. But the controversies continued and just left a bitter taste in everyone's mouth. And while this wasn't the last time there was a controversy in F1, it would take another 11 years for the next big one to occur, which was the so-called Indygate of 2005.
Now, Indygate is called Indygate not because of IndyCar, but because in 2005, Formula One actually raced at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think from about 2000, 2007 is when they raced there. I know they were on the road course, not the iconic oval. But it wasn't your typical race in 2005, as only 6 out of the 20 cars that were entered actually competed in the race, which is why it kind of is a controversy. So unlike now, where Pirelli is the only tire supplier for F1, in 2005, both Michelin and Bridgestone supplied tires to the teams. And in addition, a new rule was put in place in 2005, not allowing tire changes during the race, which requires much harder tires that could last the whole race distance. So trouble started brewing in Indianapolis during the free practice sessions, where a Michelin tire on Toyota driver Ricardo Zonta deflated, basically just a flat mid practice section, and on Ralf Schumacher's Toyota, a tire actually exploded in FP2, sending him into the wall in turn 13. This led to a brief running from Michelin-supplied cars on Saturday, followed by intense scrutiny of those tires. An engineer for Barr, one of the teams, stated, "We can't do more than 10 laps with these tires. The sidewalls collapsed due to lateral forces." This led to Michelin advising all of the teams that they supplied that unless they reduced their speed in turn 13, the same turn where Ralph's tire exploded, the tires would only be safe for 10 laps, which in a 73-lap race is not ideal. As Michelin supplied 6 teams, and therefore 12 cars, this meant major issues for over half the grid. Michelin proposed a compromise to the FIA of adding a chicane in the section before the oval banking sector, a compromise not without precedence, as the same solution of adding a chicane had been granted at the 1994 Spanish Grand Prix for safety reasons. This time, though, the proposal was denied, saying it would be unfair to the Bridgestone teams who made proper tires. Instead, proposing that Michelin teams just go through the pit lane every lap, or slow down on the banking, basically just letting all of the Bridgestone teams just race ahead of them, which is a bit of a ridiculous ask from the FIA. But Michelin even overnighted new tires from France to see if maybe that would fix the issue, but they had the same problems. Allegedly, the FIA president at the time, Max Mosley, did this for insurance reasons. But it is not as simple as Michelin just bringing bad tires for this race. The track had just been resurfaced and diamond cut before the Indianapolis 500, which provided better lateral grip. And if you didn't know, IndyCar tires were and still are supplied by Firestone, which is a subsidiary of, you guessed it, Bridgestone. So Firestone had advanced knowledge of the new track specs and shared with Bridgestone all of the effects that they had kind of collected data on and predicted from their running on the track, giving Bridgestone extra time to make sure their F1 tires would be able to withstand the forces on this track. Meanwhile, Michelin was completely oblivious of any of the potential changes that would have been caused by this repaving, and that kind of led to their problems with their tires. With their solution being denied, at this point there was no other choice but for the Michelin teams to just not participate in the race on Sunday. Apparently, this decision was in part coordinated by Ron Dennis, who before the race was seen walking down the paddock in the pit lane, visiting his fellow Michelin-supplied teams and swinging his finger in a circle above his head, mimicking a racetrack, and then mocking the throat-slicing motion, indicating what their plan would be for the race. And that plan came to fruition, with the race starting normally, with all cars doing the one formation lap. But all 12 Michelin-supplied cars after that lap came into the pit lane before the official start of the race. This left only the 6 Bridgestone cars from Ferrari, Jordan, and Minardi on the starting grid. Thus, Indygate was born. We might never know exactly what politics were happening behind the scenes, but the result was only having 6 out of 20 cars actually racing in front of hundreds of thousands of fans and many unhappy sponsors. An event which lives in infamy to this day. Let's just say they allowed pit stops again in 2006 after this fiasco with the tires. Now into some other gates that you might have heard of before. Amy will tell us all about Spygate.
All right, so let's take it back to 2007, and scandal has absolutely rocked the Formula One world with espionage controversy known as Spygate. So With Spygate, it was said that confidential technical information had been passed between teams, and this all revolved around McLaren, Ferrari, and actually the Renault F1 teams. So picture this. It is June 17th, 2007. It's the US GP. Ferrari has filed a formal complaint against their chief mechanic, Nigel Stepney, leading to the commencement of a criminal investigation by the district attorney in Italy. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit, and it's July 3rd, and a local Italian sports journal, the Gazzetta di Sport, reported that Ferrari had completed an internal investigation and had dismissed Stepney as a result. Now, at the time, the Ferrari spokesman told ITV Sport that Ferrari's actions against Stepney were related to irregular discoveries at the Ferrari factory prior to the Monaco GP. Now, on the day that Ferrari announced his dismissal, the team also announced that it had taken action against, quote, engineer from the Vodafone McLaren Mercedes team, which was later named as the chief designer Mike Coughlin. Coughlin was suspended by McLaren as a result of these claims. Now, it's all said that Stepney had passed on a wealth of Ferrari documentation to Coughlin, believed to be almost 800 pages worth of secrets that Coughlin had given to his wife to take to a Woking photocopy shop. The photocopier was actually the person who blew the whistle to set the chain of events in motion, and although McLaren's investigation found that no Ferrari documents, quote, had been passed to any other members of the team or incorporated into our cars, the FIA still had to do its due diligence. Now, the FIA found that McLaren had been in possession of the documents, but they concurred that there was no evidence that Ferrari's design secrets were incorporated into the design of the car. But on arrival of new evidence, McLaren was actually disqualified from the Constructors' Championship and handed an unprecedented $100 million fine. Though the drivers were free to fight it out for the driver's crown, the battle between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton eventually contrived to help Kimi Räikkönen swoop in and claim the 2007 title. On November 8th, 2007, the FIA announced that the Renault F1 team was being summoned before the FIA World Motorsport Council to answer a charge of possession of confidential information relating to the 2006 and 2007 McLaren Formula One cars. A statement issued by the FIA stated that Renault was found to have information, quote, including but not limited to the layout and critical dimensions of the McLaren Formula One car, together with details of the McLaren fueling system, gear assembly, oil cooling system, hydraulic control system, and a novel suspension component used by the 2006 and 2007 McLaren F1 cars, end quote. The date of the hearing was set to be for December 6th of 2007. It was said that the espionage claims revolved around an employee engineer, Philip McCreth, transferred from McLaren to Renault, taking the information with him when he switched teams. This is all according to FIA President Max Mosley. Now, I wasn't able to find anything on if they had any fines like McLaren did, but this was all just to seem to be a little bit of an issue with people taking information when they leave their workplace, and I think definitely resulted in a whole host of contract changes for future employees. Now, Chelsea is going to run us out to 2008 and a little thing called Crashgate.
So let's talk about Crashgate. It's the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, and we have Fernando Alonso, one of my favorites, starting 15th on the grid after a mechanical issue in quali the day before. And we have his teammate, Nelson Piquet Jr., starting in 16th. So as the race is only starting and Alonso has just finished a pit stop, Nelson Piquet Jr., Formula One Championship blood royalty, and rookie for Renault team, crashes into the wall at turn 17 on lap 14. It's terrible, it's sad, but it's a rookie mistake, and Piquet was even quoted saying his crash was a simple mistake after the race. Now, the safety car, however, caused 2 drivers to receive 10-second penalties for early pit stops since they were behind the crash, and they had to go in before the green light was on for entry. The reason they did this is they risked not having any gas during the safety car ride, and the other teams almost all decided to do their refuel after the safety car. This mostly left Alonso on the track alone to make up for lost time from his earlier pit stop in the race. Now, Alonso uses this and takes the lead midway through the race and wins. This race win, in hindsight, it really didn't do much for the Renault team. And in reality, Alonso also won because of other drivers' DNFs and issues. One issue being that famous oil hose, and it's like still attached to like Massa's Ferrari during the whole pit stop chaos, and he like tries driving off with it. It's an amazing video. Please look it up. And that pit stop issue, plus a time penalty that he got, caused Massa to end up 13th at the Singapore Grand Prix that year, with his rival, Lewis Hamilton, who we all love, getting third. Now, I want you to keep in mind that all of this is happening towards the end of the season at this point. It's race 15 out of 18, and Renault really isn't doing too great on their numbers, and they've had no podiums. So by the end of the season, Lewis Hamilton went on to win the 2008 championship, his first of many, only 1 point ahead of Mazda. Mazda, upset with the championship result, understandably, comes out and states that he's suspicious of the Singapore Grand Prix because that was the race that got him so far behind Hamilton, he just couldn't fight back to claim the first position title he had. Well, anyways, we ignored him. The FIA really didn't do anything, and F1 moved on. Until that is the next season, when Nelson Piquet Jr., who is dropped through the 2009 season after only 10 races, sounds a little familiar, due to low performance and getting Renault no points. Now, this is when Massa's statement comes back to the limelight, and this time, Nelson is backing him up. On August 30th, 2009, the official reports started coming out that a crash was done on purpose, and this is according to Brazilian news stations at the time, and the FIA is finally deciding to investigate. It was only weeks later that Renault in September would be formally accused of interfering with the outcome of the 2008 Singapore race and conspiring with Nelson. Now, there really wasn't much evidence that was leaked to the public, but we got a little bit. And it was a recording where Nelson states that he was asked by Briatore and Simons to crash his car at a specific corner that would allow Alonso to win. However, Alonso was cleared of having any prior knowledge to this little situation. Now, the result of the investigation was managing director, who we just mentioned, Flavio Briatore, and the executive director of engineering, Pat Simons, quitting. And Renault, namesake, was being suspended from F1 for 2 years. Briatore was also suspended from all Formula One events indefinitely, and Simons received a 5-year ban. But both bans, they were later overturned like literally a year later by a French court in January of 2010, although they kind of came to an agreement that they just would not work in Formula One anyways. My thoughts about this whole conspiracy, everything that was happening. This is what I expect to see in a movie like Speed Racer, where the final Grand Prix winners are always known. And this so-called conspiracy was confirmed to have actually happened. So that got me pretty interested in F1 history and just learning how sometimes these things do happen and that winners can be picked, although they shouldn't. But then again, I do like a little drama in my F1 watching. So yes, the final answer is this is not a conspiracy. This was just a really fun fact in history.
So, Chelsea, I don't know if you actually found this out while you were doing your research on Crashgate, but Felipe Massa is actually seeking compensation from Formula One bosses and the FIA for 2018 title loss, like very recently. I'm finding articles from like 3 days ago. It's just kind of crazy that this stuff is still so relevant.
I did see that while I was doing my research. And the only reason I didn't bring it up is because I saw there was still no conclusion to what was happening. It was still kind of just like this ongoing thing. So I didn't want to give anyone a hope that Mazda was going to get that, but I really don't see it happening. You lost. It was years ago. Lewis continued to win more championships anyway, so he proved his point over time. It happened. It's done. You had your chance.
Amy, it's actually very funny that you bring that up because over the past few days, there has been a new development in all of this. Because, as you stated, at the beginning, it looked like he wanted to sue for the title, if you will. However, he literally just wants money. He doesn't care about the title. He just wants the money he has lost. Well, I mean, while I get the whole I lost money by not winning, it still feels weird and it would set an odd precedent, it feels like. Because I feel like I could name a few other title battles off the top of my head where that could be like a legal battle could then also come into play. So I must agree with Chelsea on this. Masa, you had your chance. Back off, please.
I mean, we can kind of relate it to like, can we talk about it? It's not a conspiracy, but Max and Lewis, that was a very, very close championship. And you don't see Lewis coming back saying, hey, it's a conspiracy. I lost this one race and it screwed me over. He's just like, I lost. And I won, I won some more before that. So it's okay.
I just think that Formula One teams as a whole handle those close losses very differently now than they used to. And I feel like in 2000s where like everybody kind of was just a little more extra, I guess for lack of better phrasing. I think those close losses always hurt a little bit more. Always kind of just like got a bigger reaction out of the team, the driver, everything. But now it's like I feel like people are just a little bit more hush hush with their true thoughts than they used to be.
Oh, I definitely agree with this. And I have a theory on this, why this is happening. I think ever since Liberty Media took over, and in general, how the media landscape has developed, people, be it drivers, team principals, teams in general, are just very aware of how the media spins and portrays every single thing. So they need to be more filtered with every single thing they say. So, like, tiny statement or even a word can get so twisted these days and can get proliferated so quickly that it can kill a career. I mean, remember, I think it was a fake news story, but when Nick DeVries this season got dropped by AlphaTauri, some accounts said he bashed Red Bull by saying a quote that he allegedly said. And yes, it turned out to be fake and everything, but what if no one found that that was fake? It could have literally obliterated his career.
I think that's just something you have to keep in mind, especially like with us that we do our podcast. We don't talk about things that aren't confirmed because I think it's not really good, especially if you're someone that you want people to come to for information. And I also think that's kind of what's interesting about conspiracies because if we were doing this podcast when this was happening in 2010, we wouldn't have been talking about it because it would have been a conspiracy with no truth behind it. But now that we know it happened, they got charged and like Spygate, Crashgate, all that occurred, we can talk about it more openly. But that's the problem with conspiracies. It starts off as a rumor.
Yeah, I think as a whole, we as a group really want to be the source that you come to for correct information or confirmed information, I guess we should say. But I don't know if anybody else caught on this Formula E, but there was recently some, I guess, Spygate adjacent kind of claims in Formula E where there was a controversy involving Penske Racing and collecting data from other teams. It's just something that always seems to pop up every so often where you get a claim of, oh, a team has a radar and they're collecting something, or especially in preseason testing, you always see those kinds of claims come out with data stealing. I feel like it's become pretty common over the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh yeah, when the news came out about Formula E, I was like, what decade are we in? This is like not something you hear about in the modern motorsports era. But yeah, they were basically collecting data at the end of the pit lane. They were reading data from other teams' cars or something. And you're not allowed to do that. So, because it gives you a very much unfair advantage. So, but even they thought they could get away with it too in 2023 with all the technology we have and all of the everything is filmed, at these races too. So, it's just crazy that stuff like this can still happen. It's just typically not as common nowadays with all of the PR training, and I think everyone's just a lot more careful.
Well, I will say, if we're going to talk PR training, I'm not sure how much PR training really showed through with the whole Penske situation. Because I remember seeing one of their drivers get a little spicy on Twitter, saying that the system was simply being used to read serial numbers on the tires to find out which ones other teams were using, which technically is something that like any team can do by like taking a photo or whatever, but it's just raises a red flag for sure in terms of what kinds of rules and regulations the sport needs to put in place so that things don't happen the same way.
I will say, I wonder what kind of PR training Fernando Alonso had during the whole gate, because it was interesting. It was interesting. And I was reading that apparently there was this really big argument that I guess people found out about in the morning, that it was like, I have emails, I have proof, I'm gonna get it out there. And I was like, oh my God, drama, amazing. But also, where's the PR training?
Everybody has their moments where the PR training just fails them. I also, as somebody with a PR degree, would absolutely have hated to be on the PR team for any of these teams during these dramas, because the late nights would have been so real. There's not enough coffee in the world or espresso in the world to get you through that. You are running on hopes, dreams, and a prayer, to be real honest. So, like, kudos to all the PR teams who have to put up with this kind of chaos happening.
Yeah, and back to the Fernando Alonso with Spygate thing. So, as it is very well known now, I would say, did not really get along with Ron Dennis too well. Like, he was not very happy in that team. And so he was actually kind of using this Spygate situation to his advantage to basically like threaten Ron Dennis with all of the nonsense that was going on with like Lewis Hamilton and everything. I'll show the FIA all of these emails, with like the Coughlin guy and that whole thing.
I guess you do have to think my PR training would also fail me if I was getting blamed for the situation. Like, if you're trying to put that blame on me and I didn't even have a clue it was happening, you better talk to the rookie.
You're not wrong, Chels. I don't think anybody would handle having that kind of blame put on their shoulders. I also just feel like we have team principals and team CEOs who just make very different choices than I think the older era used to. There is a very stark contrast of old school F1 versus new school F1. And obviously it's apparent when you just watch a race, if you watch an older race. But there is something to be said about that older era of like team principal. Just they're not built like they used to be.
Honestly, it almost feels like old team principals, older drivers didn't really receive PR training. But that's me.
I will say Red Bull handles their PR conspiracies pretty well, because I feel like they're always getting thrown conspiracies like the Sergio Sabotage conspiracy and the Danny Rick conspiracy and the Max and Danny conspiracy. And I'm just like, you guys, maybe, just maybe, they're drivers, right, who are competing against one another. Wouldn't that be a wild thought?
Honestly, I think the only person in Red Bull that maybe could use some PR training would be Helmut Marko. Because, like, the drivers and the team principal and, like, everyone you hear from Red Bull is pretty well put together, very thoughtful answers. But then you just hear, like, wild interviews from Helmut Marko about, like, the whole Nick DeVries situation and, like, out of pocket comments about literally anything. So I think perhaps they might need to get a handle on that. But it is Helmut Marko, so I don't really know how much they can actually control him. So it's just interesting situation they got going over there.
There's no way that Helmut Marko is going to listen to tiny little, like, 20-something-year-old press agent who's going to tell him, no, Helmut, you can't say that. There's just no way he's going to listen to a press agent he gets assigned. Unless maybe you bring back Sebastian Vettel's press agent, Britta, and I feel like she would rein him in so damn fast, but I don't think she really would want to take that job. I know I wouldn't want to take that job, but I mean, if you're going to pay me enough, sure, I'll do it. I'll rein him in. I'll have fun. I'll just yell at him and tell him to stop being a crazy old man, because sometimes he just needs to be told that, I think.
I will say there was I do like the fake conspiracies that are very out of it that I know are very wrong. Like how people are like, oh, Red Bull put the Red Bull engine in an AlphaTauri car for Danny. That did not happen. But I do like where your head's at.
Oh yeah, like the Formula One iceberg, where as you keep going down and down, it just keeps getting more absolutely unhinged, and like there's no way in any universe that this could ever be true. But it's like, but it makes you think about it too. You're like, but like some crazy things have happened. So like, is it? And so you just kind of go down the rabbit hole of all of these just insane theories that people have like spent way too much time on digging up, like connecting all of these things, and it's like never ending. But I mean, it's interesting though, just how crazy it can get.
I mean, honestly, the Formula One iceberg is one of my favorite things. I mean, we as a podcast could do a whole series on just the different parts of it. It would take almost years, I would say, to complete.
I think my favorite thing on the iceberg or any kind of Formula One conspiracy is anything that has to relate to Bernie Ecclestone. I just think they're absolutely hilarious and they're so out of pocket. And some Formula One fans have too much time on their hands, but they give us some fantastic conspiracies to just like dive into when you're bored.
I will say, if you're interested in the iceberg, just because you heard about it and you're like, what is that? You can go on YouTube. These videos are like hours long. Hours. Or you can go on the website. It's I think it's like iceberg.com, icebergcharts.com. And it will show you everything. It will be like, this is the viewer conspiracies, the fan conspiracies, the expert conspiracies, the like in the really fanatic conspiracies, which are like the more out of it ones. But you know what? It's really fun to dive in, and obviously you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but it's really cool to learn about Formula One while you're reading the conspiracies.
Yeah, so that website's actually icebergcharts.com/I/formula_1. It all obviously in words. We'll probably pop the link in the bottom of the episode, like we try to do whenever we include links. But it's really fun because it's like interactive on the website, so it's cute to click through and to read everything. You can spend a whole host of time on that site. I can't even lie.
Can tell Casey opened the website.
Just about to say, Casey, I think, just Googled it, and by the faces she's making, she's about to go on a deep dive.
Oh yeah, because like even just some of the like little titles they have, like I've seen some of the YouTube videos before. They're great to kind of have in the background, and then all of a sudden like you like zone into something that was said, and you're like, what? But like some of the titles they have for some of these are like, what are they talking about? But yeah, everyone loves a good conspiracy, controversy, to mix things up a little bit. Especially like in the summer break right now, and everyone's going literally insane waiting for a race to happen.
Yeah, we can finally say it's race week again, actually. How crazy is that?
Maybe this season brings us another conspiracy. I would like one more. One a season. I think that makes it fun.
One big one that you talk about for years.
Yeah, but what is that one big one going to be? Because it definitely cannot be the Red Bull engine in an AlphaTauri, because no, that's not enough. We need a little bit more.
I say we're only halfway through the season. Let's give Red Bull a little more time.
Like, silly season still technically isn't done yet, so until all 2024 contracts are confirmed, anything can happen. And, I think the closest thing we have to some kind of controversy is the whole Nick DeVries Red Bull situation, but, like, that is Red Bull, so it's not really, like, that much of a surprise. Like, it's awful what happened, but, like, it's not the, like, anywhere near the level of like Spygate, Crashgate, Indygate, anything like that. You don't have where like half the grid doesn't start or something crazy like that.
Well, we could talk silly season and controversies and conspiracies all day long. We are going to wrap it up with our pre-outro that we always do. So we're going to do a team principle of the week, but I really think it's better to call this the common denominator of the week. And that really is the one and only Flavio Briatore, who just kind of seemed to have his hand in everything.
I am so glad we got a chance to talk all things gates and conspiracies tonight, because honestly, it's fun. What's your favorite gate or conspiracy? Let us know on our socials. Everywhere, we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. And also, don't forget to share, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen, like Apple Podcast or Spotify. You can actually even listen to our episodes through TikTok. So don't forget to follow us there. The countdown to Lights Out is getting close to coming to a close now. 6 days to go. Thanks for joining us in the paddock today. See you next time. Bye, Craig.
See you, Craig.
Bye, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Bye, Craig.